Hey guys, before I dive into this, I just want to say thank you for being here. Your support on this channel means the world to me, and if you're new, make sure to stick around because what I'm about to share isn't some campfire story or a made-up sci-fi plot. This is real and it happened to me. My name is Michael Harris. I'm 38 years old. I've been a truck driver for almost 15 years, and I've seen a lot of strange things on the road, but nothing comes close to what I went through last fall. I never believed in UFOs, abductions, or any of that stuff. I thought it was just a mix of people wanting attention, sleep deprivation, or conspiracy nuts reading too many late-night forums. But that night turned me into someone I never thought I'd be. Someone who can't sleep without checking the sky. Someone who wakes up in the middle of the night with the feeling that eyes I can't see are still watching me. It all started on a lonely stretch of Highway 212 in Montana. If you've ever driven long haul, you know the kind of roads I'm talking about. Pitch black, no streetlights, miles of open fields and forest, the occasional farm with maybe one dim light burning in the distance. I was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of produce. Just another job, nothing unusual. My radio wasn't picking up much out there, so it was just me, the hum of the engine, and the sound of my own thoughts. I remember glancing at the clock, 2:37 a.m. That's when I first noticed the light behind me. At first, I thought it was just another truck coming up fast, which was weird since I hadn't seen another vehicle for over an hour. The light was too bright, though sharper and whiter than any headlights I'd ever seen. I checked my mirrors again. 1 second it was way back, the next it was right on me like it had closed hundreds of yards in an instant. My heart skipped a beat, and I gripped the wheel tighter. I remember muttering out loud, "Where the hell did you come from?" Expecting maybe some jerk in a pickup with his high beams on. But then the light did something no car or truck could do. It lifted off the ground. My stomach dropped. The beam rose smoothly, silently, and positioned itself above my cab. I could see it spilling across the road in front of me, washing everything in this pale, unnatural glow. I slowed down to almost a crawl, part of me thinking maybe it was a helicopter. But there was no sound, no rotor, no engine noise, nothing. Just this humming in my head, like a pressure building inside my skull. I rolled down the window, stuck my head out, and looked up. That's when I saw it. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a chopper. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen before. A metallic shape, smooth and seamless, hovering right above me. I swear I could feel the air vibrating, like the atmosphere itself was reacting to it. My first instinct was to floor it, but then something strange happened. The truck's electronics went haywire. The dashboard flickered, my radio screeched with static, and then everything cut out. The engine, the lights, even the damn power steering. Imagine a 40-ton rig rolling dead silent down a black highway, and you sitting in the driver's seat with your pulse going through the roof. I fought with the wheel, trying to keep the truck steady, and that's when the beam hit me. A column of light shot straight down from the craft, swallowing the cab in blinding whiteness. My body went rigid. It wasn't just light. It was like every nerve in my body was lit up, like electricity and ice were crawling through my veins at the same time. I tried to move, but my arms wouldn't obey. My mind was screaming, but my mouth couldn't form a word. The last thing I remember before blacking out was the sound. Not with my ears, but inside my skull. A deep, resonating voice, not in English, not in any language I knew, but I understood it all the same. "You are chosen." And then nothing. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the absence of the cab. I wasn't in my truck anymore. I was lying on something smooth and cold, like a metal table, and above me stretched a ceiling of shifting light, panels that glowed without any visible source. My first thought was that I had crashed and was in a hospital, but there were no machines beeping, no smell of antiseptic, no doctors. Just silence, heavy and pressing. I tried to sit up, but I couldn't move. My arms and legs were pinned down by invisible restraints, as if gravity itself was stronger around me. Panic set in. I strained, tried to scream, but my throat only made this dry rasp. That's when I felt them. Not with my eyes at first, but with something deeper, like the air itself trembled when they approached. Then they came into view. 3 figures, tall and thin, their skin a faint bluish gray, their limbs too long for comfort. Their heads were elongated, their eyes enormous, black, and reflective, like polished stone. No nose, just slits where nostrils should be, and a mouth that never moved. Yet I could hear them. Their voices weren't sound. They were inside me, layered thoughts that weren't my own but forced themselves into my mind. Do not fear. The process begins. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but all I managed was a muffled grunt. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst. The tallest one raised a hand. 5 long, spindly fingers that ended in points too sharp to be human. And suddenly a beam of pale light shot out from the ceiling, enveloping me again. It wasn't painful this time. It was invasive. Like every memory, every thought I'd ever had was being peeled open and examined. I saw flashes. My childhood home in Nebraska, my father teaching me how to drive, my ex-wife's smile, the smell of diesel in the truck yard. All of it ripped from me and projected into that light. And they watched. Their eyes glimmered as images of my life swirled across the walls. Like a movie I couldn't control. Shame hit me harder than fear. I didn't want them to see everything, the failures, the regrets, the nights I drank myself into oblivion after a long haul. But they saw it all, without judgment, like scientists dissecting a specimen. Then came the pain. It started in my spine, a pressure that built until it felt like I was being split apart. My vision blurred, and I screamed, but the sound never left my throat. One of them leaned closer, its eyes filling my entire world. You are strong. You will endure. I wanted to fight, to break free, but my body betrayed me. Something sharp pricked the side of my neck. Not a needle. I never saw an instrument, but the sensation was unmistakable. A cold flood spread through me, numbing everything below my jaw. My heartbeat slowed. My breath felt shallow. For a moment I thought they were killing me, that this was it. I'd never see the road again, never climb back into my rig, never call my sister like I'd been meaning to for weeks. Then the light shifted. The ceiling peeled away, revealing a vast blackness dotted with stars. I wasn't in Montana anymore. I wasn't on Earth. My chest tightened as the realization hit me. Somehow, impossibly, they had taken me beyond the atmosphere. I could see the curve of the Earth below, wrapped in a soft blue glow, so beautiful it hurt. For a second, my fear was drowned by awe. I'd always dreamed of space as a kid, never thinking I'd get closer than some sci-fi movie on TV. And now here I was, staring at my home from a place no human was supposed to be. But then the awe turned back to terror because I remembered. I hadn't come here willingly. I was a prisoner, strapped to their table, completely at their mercy. The tallest one raised its hand again, and I felt the pressure in my skull return, stronger this time, like they were trying to open me from the inside. Images that weren't mine flashed in my head. Alien landscapes of red deserts under twin suns, oceans boiling under storms of lightning, towering structures of glass and metal. Then worse, images of people. Not just me. Others, men, women, children. On similar tables, eyes wide with terror, their bodies limp under the light. Some screamed, some were silent, and some weren't moving at all. My stomach lurched. Were these visions real? Were they memories of others who'd been taken before me? The voice inside my head pulsed again, cold and absolute. You are necessary. You are part of the design. My whole being rebelled against it. Necessary for what? What design? I fought the restraints, straining until veins bulged in my arms, until my throat felt raw from the screams I couldn't release. Then, suddenly, everything went dark. The light cut out, the figures vanished, and I was falling. Not through space, not through air, but into nothingness, like the ground had been yanked out from under my soul. My last thought before losing consciousness again was simple and desperate. I wasn't coming back. When I came to, my body felt like it belonged to someone else. Limbs heavy and slow, skin prickling as if I'd been lying in a field overnight. The ceiling above me was corrugated metal and fluorescent lights. The smell of diesel hit my nostrils and my mouth tasted like pennies. My fingers twitched and I realized I was in the cab of my truck. The steering wheel was an inch from my face. My jacket bunched under me, my phone face down on the floorboard. For a second, I couldn't figure out why being back in my cab felt like waking up from a dream that you're not allowed to mention. Then everything rushed in, the memory of the table, the stars, the light like a knife through me, and the truck's interior blurred. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so bad I dropped it twice before I could flip it over. The screen was cracked, spider-webbed across the corner, but it lit up. 10:14 a.m. The clock on the dash read 10:13. I'd been out for more than 8 hours. 8 hours I couldn't account for. The route log showed no movement except the 12 miles I'd coasted before the truck died. My fuel gauge was a quarter tank lower than it should have been. My legs buzzed as if 1,000 tiny ants had taken up residence under my skin. I must have hit my head, I told myself. Heat stroke, exhaustion, something explainable. But the part of me that had seen the curve of Earth and the cold faces with polished black eyes wouldn't be quiet. I unbuckled, stumbled out into the chill morning air, and the highway looked ordinary. Bordering fields, a farm down the road, a pickup pulling onto the interstate. A couple of birds argued in a nearby tree like nothing had happened. Ordinary made me angrier than terrified. I walked the length of the rig, touching the metal like I needed to confirm it was real and not some projection they'd left behind. There were no scorch marks, no strange residue, nothing that would make me look sane explaining my night to a cop. But then I noticed the mark on my forearm. It was small, a shallow crescent of raised flesh, pale and ridged, like a scar but fresher than it should be. I hadn't noticed it before I blacked out. I ran my thumb over it and it stung, a dull ache that made me wince. My hands were still trembling when I climbed back in, and the moment I sat I felt the hollow of the cab like a cradle, safe, familiar, and fragile. I tried calling my sister. Voicemail. I checked the messages. No missed calls. Nothing from the dispatch. The only texts were from the company asking if I'd made my checkpoint at dawn. I typed, "I'm fine. I'm back on the road." The words felt like a lie typed into my own life. I started the engine and it turned over, hesitant, the cab lights flickering once like a shutter. I drove. Every mile felt like a countdown. My hands never left the wheel for long. When I stopped for coffee at a diner an hour later, a woman at the counter gave me a long look, the kind parents give their kids when they come home with a bruise and won't explain how it happened. "You okay, hon?" she asked. I smiled and said I was tired. Lies were easy to hand out to strangers, harder when you sat across from your reflection in a window and had to meet your own eyes. Back on the interstate, I tried to piece together what had happened. Sleep paralysis? A psychotic break? But the memory of the ship and the stars felt like film you couldn't rewrite. The thing that kept pulling at me was not the memory itself but the voice. It had said, "You are chosen. You are necessary." Why me? I'm not special. I work nights, I drive, I call my sister on Sundays, I burn my fingers on cheap coffee. I tried to think of logical reasons the ship would have for choosing someone like me, but the only answers I could come up with made the whole thing worse. Maybe they took people who spent long hours alone, people whose routines left holes in their lives. Maybe they needed observers, catalogers, harvesters of memory. The more I thought, the colder my hands got. Over the next few days, I paid attention to everything. I recorded the radio, I photographed the sky at odd hours, I wrote down times when weird electrical things happened, the clock in my cab resetting, streetlights flicking as I passed, my phone losing service in pockets of countryside where there should have been signal. People laughed when I told them at the truck stop. Unit 47 joked about alien abductions. An old man told me I should get more sleep. Dispatch sent nicer messages, concerned but bland. Did I want a different route? I said no. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. That first night home, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed and watched the ceiling, waiting for the pressure in my head to come back. Instead, the thing that returned was memory flash. A woman's face half turned in shadow, a child's hand reaching, a tower of glass that hummed like a tuning fork. Not my memories, not mine at all, but moments that had lodged in me like burrs. I woke the next morning with a new mark, this one on the side of my neck, right where a shirt collar would hide it. It wasn't a scar so much as a soft indentation, two parallel grooves that felt wrong under my fingertips. My mind raced with questions I couldn't ask anyone. Where had they taken me exactly? How many others were there? Were they studying us, breeding us, repairing us? I tried to sleep that night and the voice returned, softer, threading into my thoughts like a radio signal you can't quite tune out. Find the circle. Complete the pattern. The words had no accent, and yet they sounded like a command and a promise at once. My skin crawled. What pattern? What circle? I reached for any rational anchor and found none. The next morning, my dashboard camera, an old, cheap thing I'd installed after a near miss years ago, had footage I did not remember recording. A 30-second clip of my truck parked in the middle of the highway at dawn. The lens pointed up. For the first 12 seconds, nothing. Then, very faintly, a shape crossed the frame. Silent, elliptical, impossible. The file corrupted after the 13th second. I watched it 10 times in a row, each pass leaving me more hollow. The clip ended with a timestamp I'd never seen before, a string of numbers that made no sense. I drove to a repair shop under the pretense of a routine check and showed the owner the clip. He shrugged, said techs deal with corrupted files all the time, maybe it was interference. His glance lingered on my forearm and neck, and for a moment his expression went blank, like he'd seen something he knew but didn't want to say. Take the long way around, he said finally, like it was advice. On the drive away, I realized I hadn't asked him why. I didn't want to know if he'd seen something else in my face, if there were other people who recognized the look the aliens left behind. That night, as the sun bled away and the sky went heavy, I pulled off at a deserted rest stop and sat in my cab until dawn. I told myself I was waiting for sleep, but really I was listening for anything. The hum of engines, the creak of metal, a sound I could point to and say, there, that confirms it all. At 3:07 a.m., something tapped the side of the truck like a knuckle on metal. Not a heavy thud, just a light, measured knock. My heart slammed into my ribs. I stood so fast my head swam and opened the door. The lot was empty, the world a cool hush, the neon sign of a far-off motel flickering like a heartbeat. No one was there. The knock came again, softer this time, but from inside the cab. I froze. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a call from an unknown number. I answered with my thumb and the voice filled my head. Not through the speaker but directly, crystalline and cold. Return at the circle. Then the line went dead. I dropped the phone and it bounced under the seat, screen face down, powerless. The hair on my arms stood up. I sat back down slowly and realized that whatever had chosen me, whatever had lifted me into the sky and pried my memories like shells, wasn't finished. The pattern wasn't something I could figure out with logic or maps. It had already begun to shape me, like wind shaping dunes. I rubbed my eyes and knew, with a certainty that felt like a blade against bone, that I wouldn't be able to sleep until I found that circle, and that finding it was something that would change everything. I didn't have a plan when I left the rest stop, only the words echoing in my skull. Return at the circle. The phrase gnawed at me like an itch under the skin. I drove aimlessly for hours, scanning every field, every stretch of asphalt, every shadow in the night sky, hoping something would make sense. Somewhere outside Rapid City, exhaustion forced me off onto a dirt road that wound past empty farms and skeletal barns. That's where I saw it. A field, flat and barren, with grass pressed down into a perfect ring maybe 30 feet wide. Not trampled by boots, not carved by machines. Pressed, as though an enormous weight had hovered inches above the ground and seared its impression into the earth. The circle. My throat tightened, against every instinct screaming at me to turn the truck around. I parked on the shoulder and stepped into the field. The air buzzed faintly, like standing too close to a high-voltage wire. My skin prickled and the crescent scar on my arm began to burn. The closer I walked toward the center, the heavier my body felt, as though gravity thickened with each step. When I reached the middle, the world tilted. My vision blurred and the sky pulsed with a light I couldn't explain. Stars shifted positions like they were rearranging themselves to form something. A symbol? A map? My knees buckled. I tried to step back, but the ground itself held me in place. Then came the hum, low and steady, rising in pitch until it drilled into my skull. I clutched my head and screamed, but the sound vanished into the air like water into sand. And then they were there. 3 shapes, tall, silver blue, emerging from the darkness without movement, as if they had been there all along. The same eyes, the same smooth skin, but now they were not silent. Their voices overlapped inside me. One cold chorus. You have returned. You are ready. I staggered back. Ready for what? The words felt like gravel in my throat, but I forced them out. To begin, to join, to become. The tallest one extended its hand. Light bled from its palm, casting everything in a glow that showed every line of my terrified face. I don't want this, I whispered. My body trembled so hard I thought my bones would rattle loose. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. I'd wanted answers. I'd wanted to know why they'd chosen me, what their design was, what the circle meant. And now the answer was unfolding before me like a door I couldn't close. The light reached for me, wrapping around my body. The scars on my arm and neck lit up, glowing faintly as if something dormant inside me was awakening. Pain surged through me, not sharp but deep, an ache in my marrow. Memories that weren't mine flooded in again. Cities under alien skies, endless corridors of glass, beings moving in silence across landscapes I'd never seen. But woven through those visions was something else. Me. My face among them, walking, observing, not human anymore, not alien either. A bridge. My chest tightened. I tried to resist, but my legs rooted to the ground. My lungs fought for air. The voice pressed harder. You are the vessel. Through you we continue. I thought of my sister. I thought of her smile, of how she always said I was stubborn, that I never let anyone tell me what to do. I clung to that thought like a rope. No! I shouted. The field shook with my voice, or maybe with theirs. The light faltered. For a split second I felt the grip loosen, like the circle itself doubted. I threw myself backward, out of the ring. My knees hit the ground hard, dirt grinding into my skin, but the heaviness lifted. The beings didn't follow. They stood frozen at the center, their black eyes glimmering like mirrors of the night sky. You cannot run from what you are. Their voices said, quieter now, almost mournful. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted to the truck. My hands shook as I jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared. I slammed the gear into drive and tore down that dirt road like the devil was behind me. In the mirror, the field glowed faintly, then went dark. By the time I hit the interstate, dawn was breaking. The sky blushed pink, birds cutting across the horizon. For the first time in days, the voice was silent. I pulled over at a rest area, chest heaving, sweat soaking my shirt. I looked at my arm. The crescent scar still glowed faintly under the skin, pulsing like a heartbeat. My stomach twisted. They weren't gone. They had left something inside me. Maybe a piece of themselves, maybe a tether. I knew then that this wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the endless road ahead. I thought about telling someone. My sister, a reporter, anyone. But who would believe me? To everyone else, I'd just be another trucker with too many hours on the road. Another crazy story told in a diner. But I know the truth. I know what hunted me that night. I know what waits in the sky. And if you're watching this, if you've heard my story, remember this. If you ever see a light behind you on a lonely stretch of road, brighter than headlights, too fast to be real, don't slow down. Don't look back. Because once they choose you, once you step into the circle, you'll never really come back.